The Varen Alliance had never known fear like this before. From the capital world of Sarathal Prime, the council chambers shook as distant explosions echoed from the upper atmosphere. The skies outside were black with enemy ships, endless shapes, moving like insects in a storm. The Kraith swarm had come again. The Varens were not warriors. Their history was filled with peace treaties, trade routes, and art. War was something they read about in ancient history texts, but the Kraith were no ordinary enemy. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They devoured. Once a world was targeted, nothing survived. Counselor Raven stood at the center of the chamber, his pale blue skin trembling under the bright lights. "We cannot hold them," he said. "Our fleets are scattered. Our defenses are breaking. We must send the call." The chamber fell silent. The call was an ancient failsafe, a signal broadcast on frequencies that reached far beyond Varen territory. It was meant for allies they no longer had, or for strangers they could not imagine. It was a plea for help, to anyone who might hear. Some counselors argued against it. What if the ones who came were as bad as the Kraith? What if they took advantage of their weakness? But the explosions outside grew louder. The Kraith were already burning cities from orbit. The choice was no longer theirs. The signal was sent. It traveled faster than light, passing through nebula clouds and across silent star systems. It crossed abandoned stations where only the hum of old engines answered back. And then it reached a quiet listening post on the far edge of known space. The listening post was not Varen. It was human. Lieutenant Aaron Cade was on night watch when the alert chimed. At first, he thought it was a simple stray transmission, static mixed with distorted alien speech. But the more he listened, the more he understood. The words were desperate, the voice shaking. He ran the signal through translation filters. "To any who hear this, we beg for aid. Our worlds are falling. The Kraith devour us. We cannot fight them. We cannot survive. Please, help us." Cade sat still for a long moment. Humanity had not spoken to other civilizations in decades. The galaxy knew little of them, only rumors of a race from a dangerous world called Earth. Most believed they were extinct or hiding. Both were true, in a way. The humans had learned long ago that open contact with the galaxy could bring more danger than friendship. So they had stepped into the shadows, building their colonies far from the great trade routes, watching quietly from the edges. Cade sent the signal to command. Within hours, the human High Council gathered. The debate was short. The Varans were strangers, but the Kraith swarm was a name the humans knew well. Long ago, on a distant frontier, they had fought a small Kraith hive and barely survived. If the swarm spread unchecked, no one would be safe. Orders were given. 3 days later, in the cold void beyond Varen space, a fleet of dark, angular ships emerged from hyperspace. The humans had come. The Varen long-range sensors caught the first readings. The incoming ships were unlike anything they had seen. Heavy hull plating, thick armor, simple but powerful engines. No graceful curves, no bright colors. These ships looked like predators carved from stone and steel. The Varen Defense Fleet, battered and desperate, moved to intercept. Not to fight, but to meet. The largest human ship, the Resolute, moved forward. From the command deck, Captain Mara Vance studied the Varen ships on her displays. They were beautiful, but fragile, like glass birds flying into a storm. She knew at once why the Kraith were winning. The comms officer nodded. "We're connected, Captain." The face of a Varen appeared on the main screen, tall, thin, with smooth blue skin and eyes like polished silver. His voice trembled as he spoke. You answered our call?" Captain Vance nodded once. "We heard you. We are here to help." The Varen hesitated. We have never met your kind. Who are you? The captain's gaze was calm, her voice steady. We are humans. We come from a world where every day is a fight to survive. You called for warriors. You found us. There was silence on the Veyron Bridge. The name meant nothing to most of them, but a few older officers looked uneasy, as if they remembered old tales. The word Deathworlders had been whispered in certain archives, stories of a dangerous species from a harsh, deadly planet. That night, in the Veyron capital's emergency command center, the council gathered with Captain Vance and her officers. Maps of the star systems lit the walls. Red symbols marked Kraith-occupied worlds. The swarm was moving fast. In a week, they would reach Sarathal Prime. We cannot match their numbers, Counselor Raven admitted. Every ship we send is swallowed by the swarm. Vance leaned forward. Then stop sending ships where they want you to go. You've been fighting their war. It's time they fight yours. Her officers spread out holographic models showing strike paths deep into Kraith space. Not defense, attack. Small, fast groups hitting supply nodes, command nests, and breeding ships. Veyron commanders frowned. It was too risky, too aggressive. But the humans only smiled. That's the point, Vance said. The Kraith don't expect prey to bite back. The meeting ended with uneasy agreement. Tomorrow the humans would lead the first joint strike. Back on the Resolute, Cade stood at the viewing deck, watching Sarathel's night side pass below. Lights from burning cities still flickered, tiny against the vast darkness. He thought of the stories told on Earth, of storms that could sink fleets, of forests filled with predators, of mountains that could kill with a single slip. Humanity had been shaped by danger. Now, that dangerous nature would be turned toward something else, protecting a people who had never faced such horrors. Far away in the depths of space, the Kraith fleet moved like a shadow toward its next target. They had no idea that in just a few hours they would meet the Deathworlders, and for the first time, they would learn fear. The next morning, the Veyron capital skies were still gray with smoke. The Kraith swarm had not attacked that day, but everyone knew it was only because they were preparing for something bigger. At the edge of the system, the human fleet stood, ready. The Resolute led the formation, its dark hull almost blending with the star field. Beside it, smaller escort ships moved like wolves circling their leader. Inside the Veyron command center, Counselor Raven watched the humans on the display. Their movements were sharp and direct. Every ship kept perfect formation. Every change of course was quick and exact. The Veyron Navy was different. Their ships were built for speed and diplomacy, to reach allies quickly, not to fight prolonged battles. Their formations were graceful, but loose, meant to impress visitors rather than crush enemies. Now, with the Kraith threat, the difference felt like the gap between a feather and a blade. On the Resolute's bridge, Captain Mara Vance studied the holographic map of Kraith movements. She had fought them before, though only in small numbers. This swarm was larger than anything she had seen. Her second-in-command, Commander Holt, pointed to a cluster of red icons. These are their forward nests. If we take them out, we can slow their advance. Cade, who stood at a secondary station, added, Our scans show heavy bioshields around them. We'll need precision strikes. If we miss, they'll rebuild in days. Vance nodded. Then we won't miss. The humans had invited Veyron officers aboard for the mission briefing. When the Veyron delegation arrived, they hesitated at the airlock. The inside of the Resolute was nothing like their ships. The walls were bare metal. Lighting was dim and functional. Every surface showed signs of wear, dents from tools, scratches from heavy gear. It felt less like a vessel of exploration, and more like a fortress built for war. Lieutenant Cade led them to the briefing room. Holographic projectors lit up a three-dimensional map of the target area. Kraith nests appeared as pulsing red shapes, their surrounding fleets as shifting clouds. Captain Vance explained the plan. "We'll move in with 3 strike groups. We don't wait for them to come to us. We hit them before they know we're there. Quick in, quick out." The Varen commander frowned. "If we move into their territory, we will be surrounded," Holt answered before Vance could. "That's the idea. They'll come to stop us. That's when we cut them apart." The Varens exchanged uneasy glances. This was not how they fought. But the Kraith had been winning for months. Perhaps it was time to try something different. Hours later, the joint fleet jumped into Kraith territory. The void around them was dark and cold, but ahead, faint green glows marked the edges of Kraith hives. "Targets locked," Cade reported. Vance gave the order. "Strike Group 1, advance." Human and Varen ships surged forward together. The Varen vessels stayed close to the humans, unsure but willing. The Kraith reacted almost instantly. Dark shapes poured from the hive, each one a living ship grown for war. They moved like a swarm of hornets, their hulls shimmering with organic armor. "Here they come," Holt said quietly. The first clash was brutal. Human railguns tore through Kraith carapaces, sending fragments spinning into space. Missiles streaked through the dark, exploding against bioshields with white flashes. The Varens followed, firing plasma lances. Their shots were precise, but less destructive. Still, with human cover, they managed to land hits they would never have risked before. Kraith ships swarmed around the flanks, but the humans were ready. Smaller human craft broke from the main group, drawing the enemy into narrow channels between asteroid clusters. There, heavy cannons waited, hidden in advance by careful planning. Varen officers aboard the Resolute watched in awe. This was not war as they knew it. It was a hunt. Every move was meant to corner the enemy, to break their lines, to force them into mistakes. After 30 minutes of relentless strikes, the first Kraith nest cracked apart. Its organic structure split, venting green mist into the void. The swarm pulled back slightly, confused by the speed of the attack. "First target destroyed," Cade reported. Vance didn't smile. On to the next. The fleet moved again, this time cutting a sharp path toward the second hive. The Kraith tried to block them, but the humans punched through with a concentrated burst of firepower. The Varans began to adapt. Watching the humans, they learned to move faster, to coordinate tighter, to take risks they had once avoided. For the first time in the war, they felt like predators instead of prey. By the time the third hive fell, the Kraith were in full retreat from that sector. They left behind shattered ships and drifting wreckage. The humans did not chase them far. Vance ordered a regroup. "We hurt them today," she said over the comms, "but they'll come back stronger. Next time they'll be ready for us." On the Veyran Bridge, Counselor Raven's voice came over the secure channel. "You have done what we thought impossible. You've pushed them back." Vance replied simply, "That's what we came for. But this is just the beginning." As the fleet turned back toward Veyran space, the alien officers aboard the Resolute spoke quietly among themselves. They had seen how humans fought, with speed, with precision, with a cold focus that left no opening. One of them whispered an old word from half-forgotten archives: Deathworlders. It was not said with fear, but with a strange mix of respect and hope. Lieutenant Cade overheard. He didn't correct them. He just watched the stars slide past and thought of the battles still to come. Far ahead, deep in the darkness, the Kraith swarm gathered. They had been struck hard, but they were not beaten. And now they knew a new enemy had entered the war, one unlike any they had faced before. The galaxy had begun to whisper again. The Deathworlders had returned. The victory over the 3 Kraith hives gave the Veyran alliance a spark of hope, but Captain Mara Vance knew better than to celebrate too early. The Kraith swarm was not a single army that could be broken in one fight. It was a living storm, and storms returned. In the Veyron capital, the council gathered with the human officers to plan the next stage. The Veyrons wanted to fortify their worlds and prepare for another defense. The humans disagreed. "If we wait," Vance said, firmly pointing at the map, "they will gather strength and come back in numbers we can't handle. We need to push deeper. We need to make them fear us." Counselor Raven frowned. "We do not have the strength to fight them in their own territory." Vance's eyes were steady. "You do now." The humans called their plan Hound's Hunt. It was not about holding ground. It was about chasing the enemy, hitting them fast and leaving before they could strike back. To the Veyrons, it sounded reckless. To the humans, it sounded familiar. On Earth, their ancestors had hunted dangerous predators this way, moving through forests, deserts, and oceans with speed and patience, forcing the prey into mistakes. Commander Holt explained the steps to the Joint Fleet. Strike small, important targets instead of giant fleets. Use false trails and sudden disappearances to confuse the swarm. Never let the enemy choose the battlefield. The Veyron captains listened carefully. They still doubted the plan, but after seeing the humans fight in the first battle, they no longer dismissed their methods. The first hunt began in the silent darkness of the Trellis Expanse, a vast field of drifting rock and ice. The Kraith used this region as a supply route, moving their living ships through the debris to hide from sensors. Human scout ships moved ahead of the fleet, their hulls coated with sensor-dampening paint. They weaved between asteroids, scanning. For biosigns, Cade's voice came over the comms. "Contact! 20 Kraith carriers moving slow. They don't know we're here." Vance gave the order without hesitation. "We'll hit them from 3 sides. Keep the rocks between you and their main guns. Strike hard, then disappear." The attack was sudden and brutal. From behind drifting boulders, human destroyers launched railgun volleys that punched through Kraith armor. Veyron plasma fire followed, cutting into exposed hulls. The swarm reacted, sending smaller craft to chase the attackers, but every time they thought they had trapped a human ship, it would vanish behind an asteroid and reappear on their flank. Veyron. Crews found themselves moving in ways they had never trained for, using cover, breaking formation, turning back to strike when the enemy least expected it. Within an hour, half the Kraith carriers were drifting wrecks. The rest fled into the deeper expanse, leaving behind trails of green mist. This pattern continued over the next week. The Joint Fleet struck at hidden breeding ships, fuel hives, and command nodes. Every battle was short, sharp, and costly for the Kraith. In the Veyron war rooms, analysts noticed something unexpected. The swarm's movements were becoming cautious. They no longer moved in straight lines toward Veyron space. They were slowing down, pulling their forces back, uncertain of where the humans might appear next. One Veyron strategist put it simply, "They are starting to think like prey." But the Kraith were not the only ones changing. The Veyron captains were learning from their human allies. On the bridge of the cruiser Selvaris, Captain Arek watched his crew execute a high-risk maneuver, threading their ship between 2 Kraith heavy cruisers to deliver a crippling plasma strike. It was a move he would never have attempted before. When the maneuver worked and the Kraith ships exploded behind them, Arek allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps there is something to these Deathworld tactics after all. Not all missions went smoothly. In the Jorath Rift, a Kraith ambush nearly destroyed a human frigate. The swarm had adapted, placing living mines in dense asteroid fields. When the iron spear struck one, the blast tore through its shields and sent it spinning into the rift's gravity currents. The Kraith moved in to finish it, but before they could close, 3 Veyron ships broke formation and charged. They shielded the damaged frigate, taking heavy hits themselves. One Veyron cruiser was crippled, but the iron spear escaped. Later, in the medical bay, the Veyron captain told Vance, We learned from you that sometimes the only way to survive is to attack. By the end of the month, the humans and Vayrans had pushed the Kraith back farther than anyone thought possible. Entire sectors were free again. Refugee ships returned to burned but safe worlds. Still, Vance knew the swarm was not beaten. They were watching, studying. The next time they came, they would come prepared. In the quiet of her quarters, Vance reviewed the fleet's status reports. Losses were real, ships gone, crews injured, supplies running thin. But morale was high. The Vayrans no longer looked at the humans with fear or suspicion. Now they looked at them with something close to trust. Far away, in the Kraith Central Hive, the swarm mind considered the new threat. The Deathworlders were not like the others it had devoured. They did not scatter. They did not surrender. They, struck like claws in the dark, the swarm mind began to change its strategy. It would gather a massive fleet, not to invade a single world, but to crush the Deathworlders directly. The war was about to enter a new phase, and in the shadows of the galaxy, whispers grew louder. Whispers of the humans who had stepped out. From hiding, who fought like no other, who turned even the most peaceful allies into hunters. The Deathworlders had made their mark. Now, the swarm would try to erase it. The calm after the hunt did not last long. In the dark reaches beyond Vayran space, the Kraith swarm was gathering. Where once they moved in small waves, now they formed a massive fleet, filled with thousands of living warships. The swarm mind had learned from every battle. The Deathworlders were dangerous, not just because of their weapons, but because of their will. Captain Mara Vance watched the growing threat on her ship's bridge. The Resolute hummed softly beneath her feet, ready for war. Around her, the joint human and Vayran fleet prepared to face the swarm's next move. "We knew they would come back," Vance said to Commander Holt. "But this is worse than I thought." Holt nodded grimly. "They've brought everything they have. Our scouts report over 2,000 warships. They are coming to crush us." The Vayran Council held an emergency meeting on Sarathel Prime. The stars outside the window were dark, but the room burned with tension. Counselor Raven addressed the gathered leaders. "Our scouts have confirmed the swarm's strength. If they reach our capital, it will be the end of the alliance." A Vayran general, her voice sharp, added, "We must evacuate civilians and prepare for a siege. But can our fleets hold?" Captain Vance stood, her voice steady. "Evacuation is wise, but we will not give them the prize without a fight. The humans have a plan. A trap." The council turned to her, hope flickering in their eyes. That night, under the cold stars, the human fleet moved out once again. The Kraith had begun their advance into Vayran space. Vance's plan was simple, but dangerous. They would lead the swarm into the Zelar asteroid field, a chaotic region filled with massive, fast-moving rocks and unstable gas clouds. It was a dangerous place for ships to fight, but it gave the defenders an advantage. "We know this field," Vance said. "The Kraith do not. Their bioshields will struggle against the sudden impacts, and their ships will be slowed." The fleet formed a line and waited near the edge of the asteroid field. Then, the first scouts of the swarm appeared. Dark, shapes moving in formation, slow and confident. As the swarm moved into the asteroid field, the humans and Vayrans fell back, drawing them deeper into the maze. Suddenly, the fleet turned and struck. Human destroyers fired concentrated volleys of railgun shells, striking at the lead ships. Vayran cruisers released plasma bursts that lit the space with bright blue light. The swarm was caught between the asteroids and the attacking fleet. Cade's voice came over the comms. "Swarm ships are colliding with asteroids. Damage is heavy." The chaotic field made the swarm's strength a weakness. The living ships could not easily change direction without hitting rocks or gas pockets. The humans used this, weaving their smaller attack craft through narrow gaps to cut off retreat paths. The battle was brutal and close. The Resolute took a heavy hit when a large asteroid struck its shield during a quick turn. The hull shook, alarms ringing through the ship. Captain Vance stayed calm. "Damage control teams, get to your stations. Keep us in the fight." Nearby, Veyran ships were not as lucky. One cruiser was crushed between two giant rocks, broken apart like glass. The fleet felt the weight of losses but did not slow. In the middle of the battle, a sudden explosion rocked the swarm's command ship. A human fighter had found a weak spot and fired a missile into its core. The swarm faltered. But the Kraith leader was not defeated yet. The swarm mine sent waves of smaller attack ships to overwhelm the human fighters. The dogfights that followed were fast and deadly. Human pilots used every trick learned from Earth's most dangerous skies: sudden dives, barrel rolls, and sharp turns to avoid the swarm's living weapons. Lieutenant Cade piloted one of the fighters, weaving through the swirling mass of ships. His hands were steady, his mind sharp. "Target locked," he said, firing a missile that tore through a Kraith assault vessel. Around him, other human and Veyran pilots fought fiercely. The sky was alive with fire and metal, a deadly dance under the cold stars. After hours of fighting, the swarm began to weaken. Their living ships, damaged and slowed, broke formation and fled. The joint fleet pressed the advantage, pushing them out of the asteroid field. The cost was high. Several human ships were badly damaged, some lost forever. Veyran losses were heavier. The fleet retreated toward Sarathel Prime to regroup. Captain Vance stood on the Resolute's bridge, looking at the damage reports. "We hurt them today," she said quietly, "but they will come back, stronger, smarter." Back on Sarathel Prime, civilians moved into shelters. Families clung to each other, praying for safety. The council made the difficult decision to evacuate parts of the city, fearing another attack. Counselor Raven visited the military command center, meeting Vance again. "Your people fight with courage I have never seen," he said. "You are not like other species we have met." Vance smiled softly. "We are survivors. Our homeworld was not kind. We learned to fight because we had to." Raven nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why the galaxy needs you." In the quiet moments after the battle, Vance reflected on the cost of war. Her crew was tired, her fleet battered, but the human spirit was unbroken. They had stepped out of the shadows for the first time in generations. They had shown the galaxy that humans were not just myths or legends. They were warriors, and as long as they stood, no enemy would walk unchallenged. The war had reached a deadly stalemate. The Kraith swarm had retreated, but only to regroup. The Veyran worlds held, but barely. Refugees crowded the spaceports, and the fleets were stretched thin. Captain Mara Vance stood on the bridge of the High, resolute, staring at the star map. The swarm was gathering once again for what promised to be the final assault. Commander Holt approached, voice low but steady. "We need an edge, Captain. Something the Kraith won't expect." Vance nodded, slowly. "There is one chance." In a sealed vault deep beneath the Resolute's lower decks, an ancient ship lay hidden. It was unlike any other in the fleet, a relic from humanity's early space exploration days. The ship, named the Guardian, was an old Earth warship designed during a time when humanity believed it might be alone in the universe. Its hull was thick, its weapons simple but powerful. It had been lost for centuries, until recently found drifting near a forgotten asteroid belt. Vance had pushed to bring the Guardian back into service. It was slow and bulky by modern standards, but it carried a secret weapon, a technology developed on Earth long ago but never fully explained. In the war room, Vance showed the Veyran Council the plans for the Guardian. "This ship is different," she explained. "It carries a powerful energy pulse generator. When activated, it can disable electronic and biosystems within a large radius. Counselor Raven looked puzzled. You mean it can stop their ships without destroying them? Exactly, Vance said. It won't kill the Kraith ships, but it can freeze them. Stop their shields, engines, and weapons for a short time. It's a chance to strike hard while they are helpless, the counselors whispered among themselves. Such a weapon was risky. What if it failed? What if it harmed the Vayrans as well? Vance was prepared for their doubts. We will use it carefully and only once. It's our best chance to break their fleet. After hours of debate, the council gave reluctant approval. The final battle was set. The joint fleet prepared for the assault on the Kraith main swarm. The Vayran capital, Sarathel Prime, was evacuated as much as possible. The people watched the skies with hope and fear. The Resolute led the fleet, with the Guardian following in a protective escort. As the fleets approached the edge of Kraith territory, silence fell over the bridge. Every crew member knew what was at stake. The battle began suddenly. Kraith ships poured out of the darkness, massive and terrifying. Their bioshields glowed with a sickly green light. The joint fleet responded with volleys of railgun fire and plasma bursts. Explosions bloomed like flowers in the void. Captain Vance gave the order to hold position. The Guardian moved to the center of the formation. Inside the Guardian, the pulse generator was powered up. The ship's ancient engines hummed as energy built to a dangerous level. Vance watched the displays as the Kraith ships closed in. "Wait for my signal," she said. Around her, the crew worked in silence, tension thick in the air. When the swarm was within range, Vance gave the command. "Fire the pulse!" A wave of energy burst from the Guardian, spreading in a sphere of blue light. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Kraith ships shuddered as their bioshields flickered and died. Engines slowed. Weapons went silent. For a moment, the massive swarm was frozen in space. The joint fleet moved quickly. Human and Vayran ships charged forward, firing into the helpless swarm. Missiles found their marks, and railgun blasts tore. Through the bio-armor, the Kraith leader screamed in rage as its ships fell apart around it. But the pulse only lasted seconds before the biosystems began to reboot. Still, those seconds were enough. The battle turned. The fighting became fierce. Kraith ships that survived the pulse fought harder than ever, desperate to break through. The joint fleet held the line, showing no weakness. Captain Vance's flagship took damage but stayed in the fight, coordinating attacks and directing reinforcements. As the battle raged, Vayran commanders began to believe the impossible was happening. The Kraith were breaking. Counselor Raven spoke to Vance over comms. "Your people have changed the course of this war." Vance smiled. "We did what we had to. Now we fight to finish it." Hours later, the Kraith began to retreat. The swarm's forces were broken, their numbers greatly reduced. The joint fleet pursued only briefly, knowing the victory was won. The war was not over, but the hope for peace was real again. Back on Sarathel Prime, celebrations were quiet but heartfelt. The Vayrans honored the humans who had stepped out of the shadows to save them. Vance looked at the stars from the command deck, feeling the weight of what had been done. The Deathworlders were no longer myths or legends. They were a force the galaxy could rely on.